It's just reached 2 o'clock. I believe we're ready to start. Welcome. My name's Zoe, Events Executive at Brand Finance. Thank you for joining our webinar from the Brand Finance Institute today, the Educational and Training Division of Brand Finance, which offers world-class executive training on brand strategy and valuation. Today, we're pleased to be partnering up with the team at Total Brand Value, and I will be shortly handing over to David Haig, CEO of Brand Finance, who will be opening today's event and introducing our guest speakers. Just a BFI webinar. And now I'm very pleased to hand over to David, who will be introducing today's session and the team at Total Brand Value. Thank you, David.
Hello. Hi. Well, it's very good to see you again in these series of Brand Finance Institute webinars that we've been doing. I hope some of you have seen some of them. We've had a whole variety. And in fact, we launched one the other day with the International Advertising Association in America, because we produced a report on why brands matter. And that outlined all the various different reasons why they would be important to help drag us out of the crisis that we're in with COVID. So there's never been a more important time to really understand how to drive brand value. Now, we're privileged to meet Damian Devaney of the Total Brand Value Company a year or so ago when we did a project in Ireland for Smurfit. And he subsequently left Smurfit and is now working full-time at Total Brand Value with Brian Crean and Andy Gibson, all of whom have very strong client-side experience at talking about how strategies can be used to drive brand value. So it's going to be very interesting to hear what they have to say, particularly at this time. I really don't want to take any more of your time because I'm looking forward to hearing the meat of the presentation. So with this, I'm going to hand over to the Total Brand Value team, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And thank you to the full Brand Finance team for all the help over the last few days. As David said, I worked with Brand Finance and David when I was VP in Smurfit Kappa, and Brand Finance delivered an incredible amount of value to our company at the time by showing the company how the brand can be valued and the power and the measurement of that brand value. So we're delighted to be invited today to speak in the Institute. My colleagues Brian and Andy will be joining in a minute, but on behalf of all of us, I should say, we want to thank all of the attendees because we know you're busy. We know you're on Zoom and Teams all day like the rest of us, and we really want to make sure that you get some added value today. And we've shaped the presentation so you can take away something that's practical for you and you can use straight away in your own businesses, driving your own brand performance. So in terms of the agenda, we've split the agenda into three simple sections. The first section, I want to give you a brief overview of Total Brand Value and what's different about the company. Then the three of us will bring you through one aspect of our framework. It's our customer goals. We have a number of tools and templates that are very, very strongly connected. We're going to bring you through one to share with you the power of it and show you that it's something very powerful to drive brand value and brand performance. And then the third part of the webinar is we will share with you two case studies. One is of the well-known global brand Bacardi. Another is of maybe less well-known in Europe, but of a very exciting and very successful business in the US called Sonic. So in terms of our own company, and very briefly, Total Brand Value is a specialist consultancy. We focus in on world-class brand management capability or world-class brand management live consulting. The difference with our company is that all of us have operated and been at CMO or global VP level. So we really understand how brands can perform in organizations, what happens when the agency leaves the room, how do you make activities happen effectively across geographies, across territories, across portfolios. And the big thing for us is connectivity. What we see is to drive performance in an organization, having all aspects of that organization connected against the right thing is so important. We've been lucky enough to have experience in FMCG, banking, sport, manufacturing, retail across the globe. And a number of themes have become very clear to us from our clients, particularly over the last year. One is the pace of change, the pace of consumer or customer behavioral change. One is the fact that a lot of leaders now are dispersed, which adds complexity. We also see that planning is too slow to react to the challenges that our companies are facing. And gaining alignment across an organization, having the whole organization understanding what's important and how they can play a part in achieving that has never been more important, but it's really difficult in the current circumstances. And finally, everybody needs growth. Everybody needs growth. And sometimes you need growth, but actually less resources. So what we do is to meet those challenges and meet those needs. We believe the secret is not branding, but total brand value. Everything you do touches your consumers, customers, and employees. Therefore, all must know what's important and what to focus on together, right through to execution. And that's where TBV is the only framework that powerfully embeds that. And what we mean is, we believe that branding is too important to be left solely to the marketing department. Every part of the company matters. Every person, every function, because they all have a role to play. Because every consumer experience, every customer experience determines your performance today and your performance tomorrow. So we use brand at its most strategic level to connect strategy to action, because we don't believe in just developing strategy with our clients. We have to identify what is the execution and actions to bring that strategy to life. We also connect all parts of our client's business against that strategy and action. So everybody knows exactly what they have to do, which is not only good for the brand, but it's also excellent for the culture. The thing that's different that we're passionate about is that we don't work with clients to get to a solution and leave. We've built a system that embeds the total brand value way of working in our clients so they can take it and it becomes their own. We don't give free fish, we teach people to fish. And because we've all been on the client side all our careers, we do it at speed. We recognize we want to have efficient and effective relationships. We want things to happen at pace so we can really drive performance. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Andy Gibson, to talk through one of the core aspects of our framework.
Thank you, Damian, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening all. I'm going to share just the starting point really, which is about what are we talking about when we're talking about brand management. And I'm going to share a really simple concept that can be used by businesses, no matter which sector you're in, to actually understand what your brand is, who it's targeting in the first instance, what your brand is, what it stands for, and actually how the whole business can contribute to actually building a powerfully strong brand. But we've got to just first of all get a little concept into our minds, which is the concept around what great brand builders do. And we believe at Total Brand Value that everyone in your business is a brand builder, because everyone has an impact on how your consumer or customer feels when they interact with your brand. Doesn't matter where they are in the company. And so everyone in the company must understand that there's a balance we've got to deliver, which is actually balancing our commercial goals or growth with the equity building task around our brand. And when I say equity, I mean those attributes that our consumers or customers hold about our brand in their hearts and minds. And they can either be positive or negative. And our job as brand builders is to actually deliver the growth that's required of us, whilst ensuring that our brand is in better shape tomorrow than it was today, and the day after tomorrow, it better be in better shape again. So to start the whole process, we've built a really simple visual of what brand management is. We've put it on one slide. We believe this is built across probably thousands of textbooks. This slide took us 20 years to build, but it's a really simple slide that explains the process of brand management. And I do mean brand management, not marketing. Brand management's bigger than marketing. Brand management is the creation of something worth demanding. And then marketing is the creation of that demand once you've created that. So at the top of this slide, which is where I'm starting, when you're starting the process of truly managing your brand, there's 4 inputs. The first one is you must understand your consumer. And the reason we need to understand our consumer is to ensure that what we're saying in the marketplace. The messaging is compelling to our consumers. And subconsciously they go, hey, ooh, that brand gets me. The second input is our brand itself. And we need to understand what they think, how they feel in their hearts and minds about our brand. And we need to understand, therefore, the space that our brand has the right to own in their lives. And we call that the brand essence, or the DNA of the brand. The fourth input is our commercial goals. This isn't a charity. We've actually got to deliver our business objectives. So we need to know what is it that our brand must deliver for our business in terms of objectives and goals. And then the fourth, and it won't surprise you, I'm sure, the fourth input is we need to understand our competitors and the role they play in the world. And we need to have a differentiated offer. We need to take a space that's adjacent to them, that is our space, that we can own in a credible, differentiated and compelling manner. Once we've got those inputs sorted, we actually drive for a big consumer insight. And this is an unmet need, want, belief or desire that exists today in our consumers' lives. Once we've understood that, we generate a brand promise. The brand promise is the answer to that unmet need, want, belief or desire. It actually gives the consumer a way out of the thing they're not getting at the moment. When they feel our brand promise coming to life through our execution, they go, wow, that brand gets me. And it's because we're operating off that insight that we've generated around our depth of understanding that we have of our target. That brand promise is the most compelling thing we can say right now to deliver on our objectives. It's also differentiated. And it must be the one thing that we say to our consumers every time we talk to them. Because our consumers, unfortunately, really don't care about our brands nearly as much as we do. They've got bills, they've got housing, they've got homeschooling, they've even got Wi-Fi today to worry about before they start to worry about our brands. And so if we're telling them something different every time we talk to them, our brand won't be clearly positioned. They won't know what it stands for, and it won't be in their choice set naturally. So everything we do, we must drive through our brand promise. Once we've established that, we actually build a consumer goal. Now, I'm not going to explain too much about this because we're going to go into that in detail. But it is the part of our process where we turn our commercial objective into the consumer behavioural change we must see in the marketplace in order to deliver our potential, our objectives that the business sets for us. Once we've done all that, we then build our activity plan. We call this an integrated activity plan because we don't just send marketing off into a smoke-filled room to do it by themselves. We actually bring all functions, all stakeholders in the business together in one meeting to build the plan that our consumers and customers will see. Once we've executed that plan, we measure it. And if we get back from our consumers, I know what you're saying, and it's what we want them to believe we're saying, and we're delivering our objectives, we have a plan. We actually have a brand. We have a well-positioned brand, and we are ready to keep executing. If we don't get that back off the consumer, if they're not sure what we're trying to say, or we're not delivering our goals, because we've done it in this methodical way, we can iterate and go back up and down the whole process to work out where we may have gone wrong. And at that, Brian, I'm going to hand over to you to go a bit deeper into those consumer or customer goals.
Sure. Good morning from Boston. In order to create a customer goal, and Andy mentioned that taking a business objective and then translating it into something useful, which is this customer goal that we'll get into in a few minutes. There's a key input here, which is, it seems like really basic. And when I kind of tell people, hey, listen, this is something that we actually focus on as a core input, you'd think it'd be something that every marketer, every commercial person would know and understand and have a common understanding. And that is, how do you grow brands, right? And this is not the sex education question of where do those things come from. It's actually basic math. And math can be frightening for some of us who spent our careers in marketing, but most of you probably on this call are senior enough to have experienced the fact this lack of comprehensive understanding of how are we trying to grow. And so this customer goal piece here, the yellow piece in the middle, sometimes it's called customer goal, some organizations call it consumer goal, depending on the nature of your business, but I'm using it interchangeably intentionally. So here's the thing about growing a brand and the number of options available is the problem you have is that business objectives in themselves don't really provide much guidance, do they? Someone says, hey, we want to grow by 8%. It's kind of like, hey, thanks for that, but I knew that, but how? The difference between a 6% and 8%, 10% still doesn't give me any guidance. And the fact of the matter is that there's actually very few options for growing a brand in terms of consumer behavior. And we're going to go through that. Believe it or not, it's 9 a.m. here in Boston. It's a good time for a math class. We'll just step through it simply. The fact is that in reality, all businesses must understand them in order to be able to plan effectively. And actually, sadly, most don't. So you'll hear things like, increased penetration. And if my understanding of that and yours are different, the likelihood is we're misaligned from the start. So we'll get into that. And the reality is as well that the application of this thinking to form a customer goal, which we'll do in a second after we've had this input, can have a huge impact on our business. We chose to share this because I had a call from a major global retailer a few years ago and said, you know what, we've seen every brand building system in the world because of what we do. But this concept is gold because it's the thing that actually knits together the target customer with your brand positioning and is the stepping off point for the plan. And by the way, there's a whole detail in the plan underneath, very simple, but this piece is close to a customer goal. I'm going to hand over to Damian and talk about now how you transfer from a business objective into a customer goal and share the actual way that you do that. Damian.
Thanks, Brian. So we've identified a growth option. Now, with that, we can convert what could be a sterile business objective, grow by 5%, into a customer goal. And a customer goal gives depth, it gives focus, it adds a significant amount of understanding of how you're going to grow. All of us have been in a situation where your boss rocks in when you're a more junior brand manager, marketing manager, and says, we need to have 5% growth. But that doesn't tell you the level of change you need to achieve. How many people need to change behavior? And therefore, what sort of resources do you need? So this conversion from your growth option, taking on your business objective into your customer goal, is a really important step. So our definition of a customer goal is a statement of the desired change in customer behavior required by a defined number of customers that delivers the business objective in a set time period. And by the way, this can easily be a customer goal or a consumer goal. It works perfectly for both. But for today, we're using the term customer goal. Another example, banking. Bank of America, to recruit new, persuade 50,000 first-time homebuyers of existing Bank of America current account holders to purchase a Bank of America mortgage in FY20. That way you don't have the barriers of knowing the bank or been in the bank. What you're doing is you're taking a current customer and you're recruiting them to a new category. And because you have clear understanding of the size of change, that 50,000 can be broken down by branch, by district, by month. So it becomes very clear for the troops on the ground what exact behavior change they need to do to achieve their objective. Ryan mentioned that retention is often a very important growth option. So persuade 120 existing UK customers to purchase brand Y. Persuade 120 UK customers who purchased brand Y 3 or more years ago to purchase a new brand Y each month in 2020. So that's because you can imagine that's a very different set of challenges and a very different set of potential triggers to drive a sale in that space because you know exactly who you're going after. So in summary, the customer goal, if you're very clear on your options for growth, it is really important. It really focuses the whole team on how you're going to grow. The more focused, the higher success rate you have, the better alignment you have, and the better activity that you get. And the customer goal impacts overall effectiveness and efficiency. It also drives understanding of how you budget and resource for something, and it clearly focuses where you need to understand your target market, your insights, and eventually the solutions to growth. But we're now going to look at 2 case studies to bring total brand values, philosophy and performance to life.
I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Andy, who was the former CMO of Bacardi, and just talk about maybe some of the learnings from the application here. Andy.
Thanks, Brian. And I'll, before I get into the learnings, I'll just give you a quick insight into what we did at Bacardi. I went into Bacardi as the global CMO, and it was clear that there was some improvement. There was some things to be done across the business. And we started that improvement, again, not surprisingly, through the brand lens. And I'll just get you to go to the next slide there, Brian. And I'll give you a feel, folks, for what that situation was. And when you unpicked it all, there was 3 really big things that we had to fix. 1, category leadership was challenged. The brand was losing share in most markets, and I'm sure that you know the Bacardi brand. It exists in just about all the markets that spirits are sold in the world, and in most of those big core markets, the brand was losing share. The category had actually premiumized, and there was no portfolio play from the Bacardi brand. So the brand was playing at the premium segment, not the super premium and prestige segments, which was a problem because those were the segments actually where the growth was coming from. Brand equity was in trouble. The second big thing, it was perceived as a bit of a hollow brand, a bit too corporate, a bit too big and mainstream. There was no brand idea in any marketplace. The architecture of the brand, in other words, how the brand was put together, how the different variants and different sub-brands played out in the brand were not clear. And we didn't have clear roles at all because we didn't have that architecture worked out. And the packaging was outdated, didn't have a lot of credentials. Now, I might hear a number of you say, yeah, the first thing a new brand guy does is change the packaging. This one really did need changing. And then the third big thing we learned was about inconsistency. The brand, which was truly a global brand, the #1 brand of rum in the world, was actually being managed locally in many countries, didn't have a global lead, a global thought. The brand was targeting many different types of target consumers in most countries, and therefore there was just no global consistent strategy. There was no global ability to learn. And so we had to do something. So what did we do? All marketplaces. And these are just some of the activities, the big ideas that went out into market. The first one in top right was let's focus on drinks. Let's get one signature drink that this brand has owned previously and can own. And not surprisingly, it's a rum and Coke. Now we call it the Cuba Libre because that's the twist. That's the Bacardi interpretation of a Bacardi and Coke. We served it, as you'll see, in a really, really prestige copper cup. Really important to get this perfect serve right. Elevate it for Jamie. Make him feel special. The next thing we did was we actually built out the portfolio into more prestigious and luxury marks. So we've now got the Bacardi 8-year-old, the Bacardi 10-year-old. You can see them there in the top right. A 4-year-old to play that bridging role between the mainstream brands and the more prestigious brands. You can see the packaging update there. Very masculine, lots of credentials, lots of heritage, lots of quality in it. We built a new communications campaign, which was all around the idea of untamable. And that was all about our consumers, that spirit of not wanting to give up, wanting to continue the fight. And Bacardi's always been untamable. Very powerful campaign. And then, you know, the results were fantastic. We took a brand that was in a bit of trouble. We got the consumer attributes, the equity scores, really turning around. Brand for me up 30, more popular these days. That's big in spirits. A big attribute you need to be driving. above 30%. Some of the activities we did, we got 8.5 billion opportunities for consumers to see it. And all markets were in growth. Those big core markets from 5 down to up 3.5, big turnaround, and then all our developing markets in huge double-digit growth. So that's a bit on Bacardi, and it's a bit about what we did by taking this approach to actually making sure the whole business knows what our total brand offer and therefore their role in building our total brand value is all about. And just to share some learnings after, you know, being in the seat and actually operating this framework, this approach, this belief. The first thing I'd say is that, you know, you've got to know which brand is going after which consumer. Who are they? Know them intimately and position your brand really powerfully against that consumer. That all starts with that insight. Give your organization an ability to talk to each other about brand. Give your whole organization an ability to understand brand. And we do that by this common approach. One language, one set of behaviors, one set of tools. Give the whole organization an ability to actually get into the planning of what the brand should be doing and contribute, but in a fast, powerful, efficient way. The power in that, I mean, you can't even put a value on the power of giving the organization the ability to plan together and own that plan. Once they own it, they execute it. The other big learning that I want to share is just the cultural lightning rod that actually giving your organization the ability to understand brand, their role in brand building, and how consumers interact with brand. You end up energizing the organization. You end up with an organization feeling like they can contribute, they want to contribute. You end up with an organization that celebrates success together and learns from some failure together. But they want to fix it. They actually want to get on the front foot again together when they've had those failures. And they will happen. But this gives them ability to work together, learn, and go forward again. And you end up with an organization that's winning together, that's outpacing competition and truly feeling like in the marketplace, they have a role, their brands have a role, they know their consumers, and they're out there to win. So at that, I think we'll throw over now to the panel and any questions and answers that folks might have. I see there's been a bit of Q&A coming in there. So David, I think you're going to facilitate this one.
I am. That's true. In fact, what I was going to start with was probably the cynical finance guy's view of this whole thing, because I find the presentation and the approach very interesting. But, you know, we've been through a year of pretty tough conditions. Many companies are suffering financially. There are all sorts of things going on. And the question for me is, to what extent are CEOs, CFOs, and boards receptive to these arguments? Are they actually taking this sort of stuff seriously? And do you see that as a challenge? And how do you make them wake up to the need for this kind of serious approach? So any or all of the three of you?
I'll jump in first. One of our current clients who has just expanded their engagement with us, particularly because of what's happening. They're very busy and they recognize that they need to start to do less, but what they do has to have bigger impact. And they need a process that's rooted in the customer, that everybody can understand, that actually drives more engagement, more differentiation, but less multiple activities that have built up over time. That's one example of how this type of framework helps a company's efficiency and focus. And sometimes that busyness, because people build up lots and lots of activity from the past. That's a live example with us at the moment, David.
It's obviously is that the reason people choose us is because we bridge the gap between marketing and finance. We give them a financial reason for taking action. And I thought some of the presentations there were very interesting in terms of the financial returns that have come from it. It seems to me that at any time, it is the financial numbers that focus the mind. And I seem to remember this is what happened at Smurfit with Damian, you know, the fact that we were putting a brand value on the Smurfit brand, saying where it was coming from, had an energizing effect on some of the senior management. You know, in some ways, in a current environment like this, you could argue that your primary target is the CFO. And if he's the gatekeeper, if you can convince him that all this fancy stuff is actually going to increase the bottom line and increase their share price, then they'll do something. So does this mean that really you should be doing a brand valuation with this coming along behind?
Well,
obviously a somewhat self-interested question, but you know.
Well, David, it's chicken and egg. That's why the system we have is about increasing performance through brand, and yours is measuring performance. Whether one happens first or second, it depends on the actual client. So, and you're dead right. We always find that one of our key customers is the CEO. It's the CEO who sees all of the departments. The CEO sees all of the organization, and usually they can see what's the missed opportunity by not having alignment across all of those parts of the organization. So it's definitely a conversation for CEO, CFO, because what we do is support business, not necessarily just purely the marketing department.
It's interesting, really, because I feel that there's a sort of yin yang here, which is that it's frequently said that we measure and other people do. But I think the reality is that what we're doing is we're putting performance measures on things to identify what should be done and what should not be done. And one of the things in the current market, which I think is particularly relevant, is that past recessions have always suggested, from lots of analysis, that companies should actively continue investing in their brands and their marketing through and beyond the recessions. But in order to get that argument across, you've got to convince the finance director. And if you don't, you've had it. So that I would argue that in a time like this, when most companies are suffering, really the key to getting these big, hairy gold marketing projects through is actually to convince the marketing director to become more marketing, the finance director, become more marketing oriented in his approach. And I just wonder, how many clients do you think the finance directors are the kind of hard hat guys who say, keep those flower arrangers away from me? And how many of them do actually buy this stuff? And how do you convince them?
I think very quickly, and happy for any of my colleagues to come in on it, what we're seeing increasingly, David, and one of the reasons we picked the example we did a minute ago is, you know, if you're looking at a business that's private equity backed, there is a kind of certain reputation in that industry for being really only focused on things that make the difference. When you get the group CEO, the CFO, etc., sitting in the room with you as you're doing the brand plan and then the activity plan, that kind of tells you something about the answer to the question you just had, which is in practice, what we see is a much, much higher correlation with success when we have those senior folks, non-marketing, in the room during things that would seem to be the reserve in the past of the marketing department, our positioning, our integrated activity plan, etc., those consumer or customer goals. That's what makes the difference between where we really succeed and where it's, you know, as you said, the flower arranging department, which is cruel, and you said it, not me, and I'm a marketer. You know, that's the reality of perception if you don't get that right.
So we've only got 3 or 4 minutes left, so I'd like to leave you with one hypothetical, which maybe all 3 of you could have a go at, which is that one of the sectors that has been in the sunshine, I suppose, during the coronavirus crisis is the pharmaceutical industry, particularly those pharma companies that have invented stuff. And so if you look at Gilead, at Pfizer, AstraZeneca, who are all just about to crack the problem and solve everything, there are a lot of quite interesting dilemmas there about to what extent should we be being nice to our customers and creating a reputation for being good guys, and to what extent should we just be filling our boots and making as much money as we possibly can out of everyone. It's a classic example of the conflict between making money and making friends, which will help in the long run. I'm not 100% sure from what I've seen that they are veering towards the purpose-driven organization that will build their long-term brand. I get the feeling that they are all quietly just trying to fill their boots. Would you like to comment?
Andy, put you on the spot.
Yeah, I would love to comment. I think it's the balance between short-term goal and long-term goal. And I think that needs to be a balance, David. I don't think you can commit commercial suicide and say it's all going to happen, you know, down the track. Trust us. That just cannot happen. And that's why that slide on balance between equity and commercial growth is actually the key to the way we approach it. That's why we want all senior stakeholders at the table when we're having these conversations, because you can't say that it's, you know, it's all kisses for tomorrow. You know, we need to deliver today, but actually we need to build trust. We need to build those attributes in our consumers or customers' hearts and minds that say, you know what, I trust this brand. I would recommend this brand. I actually would buy this brand again. And I think that the short-term gain can be valuable today, but I believe in the long run, unless you have consumers trusting your brand, unless you have equity that's built up in their hearts and minds, that means they will recommend you. I think in the medium to long term, I think you run out of road, and I think that it's a short-term to medium-term game, and we think great brand builders build brands that last for centuries and decades at the smallest. Yeah. You know?
It's called, burning the furniture to heat the house. Never a good idea. You'll have a warm winter for one winter.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
there's many brands out there, David, that do burn the furniture to keep the house warm, and there's a whole long list of them that I'd be happy to get on a call and discuss.
I think there are an awful lot of brands out there that say one thing and do another. You know, It's all very nice to say you're purpose-driven and do all this wonderful stuff, but in reality are quietly doing bad things. And I think that's particularly true of a lot of inertia-type businesses like banks and telcos, who are dreadful at exploiting their customers. In fact, rather amusingly, the other day, we received a renewal notice from our insurance company, whose name I will omit. But basically, what it said at the end, it was a very expensive quote. And it said at the end, you've been a customer with us for a very long time, and you may find that this quote is a bit high. So we recommend that you go and get some alternative quotes. And I was thinking, is this insane? And so I rang up the marketing director of the said insurance company, and he said, oh yeah, we're forced to do that by the ombudsman, because so many insurance companies have taken advantage of their customers that the ombudsman now insists they say it on their renewal notices. And I thought, this is nuts. But anyway,
and David,
I'm going to end now because we try to stick to our time. And I just want to thank the guests very much. That was a very interesting presentation, very stimulating. But what I would say, and here's the plug for Brand Finance, that I think the catalyst for actually getting these kind of initiatives going and for energizing the board of directors of companies to do something is to frame a financial case and a measurement case from the beginning and through the process. And if you can show them the size of the prize from the beginning and right the way through, you actually get them to do stuff, and you know, they will absorb all this brand strategy action and will do it. And if you don't articulate that financial case, you just won't. And it's not something you do at the end of the process. But with that, I'll hand to Zoe to do the necessary.
Lovely. Thank you very much, David. And thank you so much for all our speakers today. As David said, we're actually past 3 o'clock now, but I think everyone will agree with that we could have gone talking through the afternoon. We still had several questions to come through. I think the team at Total Brand Value has put their contact details in the chat, so please do get in contact with them directly if you would like to continue the discussion. I'm sure they'll be very happy to speak with you further on the topics. So once again, thank you to all our speakers, thank you to all our participants for joining us today. And I'd just like to encourage you all to complete the survey that will pop up at the end of this presentation. And of course, please do keep updated with future webinars from the Brand Finance Institute by visiting our website. But thanks so much again, everybody, for joining us today. And we look forward to reconnecting with you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.